But before we do that, there needs to be a process of sanctification. Okay? And that is, again, a continuing change worked by God in us, freeing us from sinful habits and forming in us a Christ-like character. The basic meaning of to sanctify is to set apart to God so that God can do his will in our lives. And once we allow that to happen, what God can do with us, again, allowing us to team up with him, is unimaginable.
Cesar, wake up.
What do you want?
Let's go painting.
Painting right now?
Yeah, right now.
For real?
Yeah.
Why?
It's late. Nobody's gonna see us.
You think so?
Yeah. Come on, man. I need your help.
Alright, man.
Alright.
Let's go.
Shit, we just gotta be quiet.
Alright, man. Hey, wait, what about David?
David? He's asleep, man. He's not gonna wake up. Besides, we're gonna be quick.
Sure?
Yeah.
So I'm Mexican American, born in Chicago, raised in Chicago, but from Mexican immigrants. My mother came to Chicago after a brother of hers came to Chicago. She arrived in the city around the age of 19, 18 years old. She adjusted quickly. She started working, trying to accomplish that American dream, as many continue to do so today. And she met an individual who probably wasn't the best candidate morally for her. But nonetheless, they fell in love and they got married. They got married. They had my older brother Cesar. And then a couple years after that, they had another child named Michael. And a couple years after him, a daughter followed named Claudia. And things were going smooth, I guess, but problems arose, and though I don't want to get too much into that, they ended up getting a divorce. So my mother then lives with her sister, my aunt, and her 3 children. She's single. She's obviously down because of a recent divorce. And in one evening, she went out. She went out with a group of individuals to this Spanish music playing dance club. And it was in this club that an individual approached her, another man. He approaches her, and from what I'm told, he gave her a different alias, a different name. Not because he was trying to be a stalker or hurt her, but just because, you want to, I guess when you have the mentality of a player, or when you're not too serious, and I say this because later I'm going to share why he wasn't serious. They danced, they ended up liking each other and really being intrigued by each other. So he finally gave her his real name. And so they continued this relationship. He didn't have prior children. He wasn't married before. This was his first serious relationship, and he was just having a good time. Well, when you have too much of a good time, and you sometimes lose focus, and you sometimes do not think logically. And so, in one situation, one adventure, one evening, could have been a morning, I don't know, could have been an afternoon, I don't know, but she got pregnant. She got pregnant, and in July 4th, 1980, I was born. And so now, here's this guy who is 7 years her minor, and they move in together. She's 7 years older than him. She has 3 children. The oldest being 9, 10 years old. And now they're a family.
Really, I didn't get to know who she was as a person, you could say. Just kind of as a mom and the caregiver, and in that sense she was very loving. I remember her tucking me in, like giving me a hug, and I would just kind of hang on to her, and she would tickle me, and be like, oh, let me go. It was just, she was fun. She was fun loving. She was to me, she always looked joyful, happy, very loving mom. I was the youngest out of the first 3 kids she had. I was the youngest and the only girl. I have 2 older brothers, and then Milton came after me when I was 5. I obviously was very happy to have a baby brother. After him, it was 2 other siblings, and always happy to have a baby in the house. I was 5, 6, and 9 when my siblings were born, so it was always really exciting. I didn't take into account that, it's number 6, or number 5 or like everyone else. But yeah, she was very loving. I mean, obviously not perfect. Everybody has their struggles. She, rarely lost her patience with us that I saw. Very patient, and just to me, she was, we were very close.
My mom had 3 kids prior to Milton and my other siblings. We grew up in Chicago. I was born in Los Angeles. My dad got married. They moved to Chicago when I was like maybe a couple of months old. What happened after that, they went through some separation. It wasn't a very good marriage, in the sense it was dysfunctional. My dad had some issues, and my mom did the best that she could to provide for us after they got separated and divorced. I remember my mom being a single parent. It was me, my brother Michael, and my sister Claudia, Emma at the time. We went through our struggles. My mom, she was a hardworking woman. She did the best that she could to provide for us. Being a single parent, I could relate now because as I got older, I realized it was a hard time for her. As a parent, she was the best mother, in my eyes, in my opinion. I can only speak from my experience and the stuff that I witnessed. As I got older, I got into some issues and some troubles with in the neighborhood, and I remember times where my mom would be working 6, 7 days a week sometimes. She would home cook, do the laundry, provide for us. We always had that. It's funny because she used to make us lentil soup, and I used to hate that. I don't eat lentil soup, but that's all we had at that time.
Well, while she was pregnant with me, she walked to the clinic. I assumed to get a checkup for her pregnancy so that I can be well and be healthy. And she read this piece of paper on the wall that said Bible story books for children. And so she filled it out. She also filled one out for my aunt, another one for my uncle, because we still lived in the same building. And a call porter, an individual that basically sells Christians books, representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church, he knocked on our door one afternoon. My uncle answers the door, and this individual, this man standing outside, shows him this piece of paper with my uncle's name, and he said, "Yes, I am this individual, but I did not fill that paper out." So my uncle calls his wife, who was somewhere inside the house, and calls her on and says, "Hey, did you fill out this piece of paper? It's got my name on it. I didn't do it, did you?" And she says, "What are you talking about? Tell him to come in. I don't know." So he comes in, he shows again the paper, and then she and him together like, "Well, we didn't do it. Who did it?" So my mom says, "Well, I did. Tell him to have a seat, because I'm interested in the books that he could be selling." So he sits down and he talks to my aunt, he talks to my uncle, and he talks to my mother. Now my father, he was working, so he was not there. And so while they're having that conversation with this individual, this call porter, representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church, my uncle buys books. My aunt says, "Fine, your books, you can read them." Okay, fine. My aunt wasn't really into any kind of Christian faith or practice that was a Roman Catholic. And so my aunt says, "I want to buy some books too, obviously, because I filled out the forms, but now that I know the information, I'm going to wait and I'm going to ask the father of my soon-to-be child what he thinks." Great. So as this man is leaving, my uncle, he asks him, "Hey, do you give Bible studies? Or Bible studies, excuse me." And this man says, "Yes, I do, I can. Are you interested?" And so my uncle says, yes, I've been reading and I'm very interested. I'm intrigued. I got questions. So let's set this up. So next week he comes and they start the first Bible study. My aunt, my uncle, and my mother with this individual. My aunt, she was pretty skeptical. My uncle, he was really interested. He was really sincerely seeking truth. Well, they tried to convince my father to sit down with them for a Bible study. But he was always like, nah, I don't want to. You know, that church, and that's a cult, they're crazy. Forget it. If you want to study, that's fine. It's up to you. Whatever. Now, mind you, they're not married. But he's there, and he's being abusive, and he's like, well, if you want to do it, fine. It's up to you. They're crazy. You're crazy. Whatever. So prayers continued. Bible studies continued. Then in 1983, by the power of the Holy Spirit, through prayer of these individuals, praying for my father, while working at a gay bar at the time, says, you know what, I need to leave. And he took off his apron and he left it on the counter and he went home. The Bible studies were happening in the living room, which is in the front part of the house. He came in through the back. And so when he comes in and walks into the living room, everybody looks at him like, what are you doing here? Like, shouldn't you be at work? And he says, no, something told me to come and sit down and listen to what you guys are saying, what you guys are talking about. Now, he never spoke that first session of Bible study, but he was very intrigued. The Holy Spirit was touching him, was working in his heart. And so he continued joining them through Bible study, week after week after week. And then he was starting to be convinced about the message that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has, the truth found in Scriptures, the revelation of Jesus Christ. But he wasn't 100% convinced, so he says, okay, I'm going to do something. I want you, talking to this Seventh-day Adventist representative, to join us for a Bible study where I'm going to ask questions, and hopefully you have the answers. But I'm also going to ask other religions or faiths to come and join us as well. And whoever gives me clear answers, then we'll go with that, meaning him and my mother, that they will go with that faith and join that church. It was a bold move, crazy move. Like, I don't know many people that have done that or that would do that. I understand that many people go to different churches and they talk to the priests and the pastors or the bishops from the different denominations or different religions. But to have all these leaders of different churches in your house to ask questions, it's kind of like last man standing wins. It's pretty bold. So I gotta give it up to all these individuals who accepted the challenge to join this group, this Bible study, and answer questions. And so this happened in 1983. So here they are. My parents, my aunt, uncle, with 4 different religions. One being Catholic, one being Seventh-day Adventist Church, one being a Jehovah's Witness, and I do not remember what the 4th one was. So here they are, these 4 family members of mine, aunt, uncle, father, mother, with these 4 leaders of these 4 different churches. Question after question was being delivered onto them. Some answered, and all of them tried to answer, and hours went by, then it was really late at night. Throughout it, one after the other was leaving, whether it was because they were tongue-twisted or came before a barrier that they couldn't deliver an answer to that satisfied my father, or perhaps they were tired. I don't know, but they left. And the last man standing was this individual representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church, this call porter. It was then that my father decided, all right, I believe you. It all makes sense. And I will join this church. So days later, In 1983, my parents got married. And then they got baptized inside the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Then in 1984, another sister followed. So now it was 6 of us. And the beauty of this is that not only did my parents get baptized, my aunt and uncle also got baptized. And they got baptized before them, but they also joined the church. But with my parents, my older siblings also got baptized. My brother Cesar, my brother Michael, and my sister Claudia. They joined the church as well. Obviously I didn't because I was too young. I was only 4 years old. Or 3 years old. And my sisters younger than me obviously were babies. And everything was going great. Obviously there's challenges, and whenever one joins a church, whenever somebody gives their life to Christ, the enemy, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, the evil one, he obviously perspires to bring you down and to challenge you, to bring you before conflicts, to discourage you from your walk with Jesus Christ. But that didn't discourage my parents. Obviously, yes, problems came. I don't remember what they were. I was too young. I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff at the time. I'm sure they came, but my parents stood. They stood in the faith. And so now we are this happy family, right? 3 boys, 3 girls, mom, dad, everything's going great. In the fall of 1985, my mother and my father having a conversation in the kitchen about going to church. So she tells my father that, you have to go to, I'm going to go to church early before you, because I have to do Sabbath school. I have to start Sabbath school. And she was the secretary of Sabbath school, church Sabbath school, so she had to be there early, but I think she's also involved in the program. And she tells my dad, I'm going to leave early, and you can take Claudia, which is my older sister, and the younger kids, and she can help you. And I'll take Michael and Cesar, which are my older brothers. Great. So she leaves, and I remember then coming to approaching the church, my father driving, and there was an ambulance blocking the way, and we couldn't go through that street to park near the church, so we had to go around. And right before my father's parking, my cousin's husband or boyfriend, I don't know if they were married at the time, he comes running out of the church and comes to my father and says, "You know what, you have to go inside. I'll park the car. You run inside because Emma, my mom, his wife, just passed out. She fell, she fainted, and she's receiving medical help." So he does that. My cousin comes in the car, my cousin's husband comes in the car, my father goes inside. We then walk towards the church. My older sister's holding my hand. We're going down the stairs, and I remember seeing this group of individuals just huddled over my mother. And I remember being this 5-year-old kid, just curious and wanting to know, who is that on the floor? And later I found out it was my mother. But days went by, and then I remember the second time I saw my mother, or the time I saw my mother after that, was behind a glass window. You see, my father and my sisters and I, we went to go visit my mother at the hospital, at Mount Sinai Hospital in Chicago. And because I was too young at the time, and I don't know if the rules are different now, but at the time I couldn't go inside her room to talk to her, to see her, to touch her, to give her a kiss. And so I remember having to wait in this children's area. I remember that clearly. My sisters and I, we were in that room playing with women in what now I know are called scrubs, in their nurse uniform, or their hospital uniform, as I thought it was called. And so we left, and as we're walking the hospital, and this is me without seeing my mother in person, my father taps me on my shoulder, and tells me to look up. And to this day, I can drive by Ogden Avenue in Chicago and recognize the window that my mother stood before saying hi to me. And I remember looking up, and I remember she's telling me that she loved me. And with these actions, she said, she pointed at herself, she crossed her hands over her heart, and she said that she loved me. She pointed then at me. And I didn't think nothing of it. I said, great, Mom, she loves me. I love you too. Okay, bye. And we left. After that, I then saw my mother in a funeral home.
My mom says, listen, I need you to stay home because the guy from the light company is going to come to check on some fuse boxes. That's why I didn't go to church that day. So she packed up all the kids. I remember her used to make quesadillas in the microwave and feed us and stuff. And here are the kids with their nice shirts and Milton, and all of that stuff. And I get a call, your mom had some sort of attack or something. She fell off. That was early October of '85. On the 29th, she died. Brain hemorrhage had happened. She passed away at 39 years old, right? I'm 15. My brother Michael was like, what, 11? My other sister was like 10. Milton was 5. Lynette was like 4. And Annette was a year and a half old. I lost my mother. Milton, we all lost our mother.
I had to go down the aisle and go up these 2 wooden man-made steps to look inside this box, if you will, at my mother's body. She had a white dress, almost with a tint of cream color, and she had a white leather Bible resting over her pelvis area, and her hands crossed were laid over that white leather Bible. And I remember looking down at her and just wondering, why is she here? Why is she sleeping? And then I remember looking up at my father on my right side and telling him to wake her up. And then he looks at me and he told me that if he wants me to see her again, and if he wants me to see her awake, I gotta pray. I gotta continue praying. And so I remember there praying right in front of her body at 5 years old. I believe prayer has power, and I believe because of prayer my mom will wake up once again. Obviously she didn't wake up right there and then, but because I prayed and I continued to pray, and I still pray today, and I will continue to pray and talk to God, that will establish a relationship with Him, and I will connect with God because of His Son Jesus Christ. And when Jesus comes, man, my mom's gonna wake up. Yeah, this is the house that I grew up in. I mean, born here in July 1980 and moved out once my mother passed away in 1985. I remember this clearly. So we lived in this floor over here, obviously where the doors come in. And I remember getting on a bike, one of those Night Rider 3-wheelers, going with you sit down and you have this backrest and you pedal on the front wheel, going through this. And I remember coming from this hill up here and just riding through here and just braking really hard and just spinning it right here, right in front of the house. I can't forget that. So yeah, this is the community of Berwyn. Yeah, even though, you know, this wasn't as crazy as Chicago, you know, we still had connections to Chicago. We still partied. We still went to Chicago a lot, and we still did mid-shift over here. I mean, when I was in high school, I was the only, that I know of, I was the only graffiti artist tagging around Berwyn, this community. So I felt like, you know, I was a bad guy. It was cool, man. I'm the only graffiti artist here in Berwyn painting around. It wasn't too dangerous, wasn't too bad of a community. Still okay, generally speaking. Okay, safe neighborhood. But yeah, this is my community from the age of 12 when we moved in 1992 till my father passed away when I was 21 in 2001. Turning here into the street that I lived in, Home Avenue. This was my block. This neighbor here didn't have a fence. We would always run up here, through here, and with our bikes sometimes and go down this hill. Crazy because this brick wall here, I painted that and I could still see some of that spray paint that they couldn't sandblast off. I spray painted that when I was in high school. Put up my graph name. So this is the garage that I painted on when I was in college. Or high school actually. I painted this garage and the police questioned if we did it, but of course we denied it. But yeah, sorry. It was my brother and I. Alright guys, so so from the age of 12 to 21, so that would be from 1992 all the way to 2001. This house that you see behind me is the one I grew up in. 7th grade, 8th grade, high school, and until my 3rd year of college, I lived here. A lot of wonderful memories. I mean, this house was tore up. I mean, it was the ugliest house in the block. But my father, obviously because having a big family and him doing construction, he knew like, okay, I could get this house, I could repair it, remodel it throughout the years, and so we did. And I remember it was nasty, like we would have to sleep on the floor, but I love those memories. We were together as a family with me and my siblings, and I can never forget that, and I really cherish them. It's interesting because one time I snuck out like I did many nights. I snuck out of this particular window because my bedroom was also there. I don't know if people do this, but we certainly did. Like we would always move rooms. Like one time my room was here, another time my bedroom was here, and then my before I left this house, my bedroom was up there. But one time, this was my bedroom, and I snuck out from that window to go paint, and I constantly did that as well. Story with this one, when we did this mural project with the community, I had my son with me, who's now 10. At the time he was 4. And so I had him stand against the wall, wearing a bag, he was wearing a Cubs shirt, a Cubs hat as well. And I had him stand against the wall and extend his arm, okay? And I traced him
And then I did this, and I extended my hand, connecting it to where I traced his to me. Okay? And I had a friend of mine trace me. And then I came in and I did some a little bit more lines, and I filled it in with the solid black and the solid orange, yellow, if you will. So I love this because of it. It's actually me and my son, who's now 10, but at the time was 4. It's really cool.
But now here we are, a family again, and I have a new mom and a little brother. And in 1987, sister followed. My sister named Jeanette. Problems continued. We're getting older. And then in 1990, my brother, David, is born. We moved to Texas. We followed this Familia Acosta, the Acosta family, because they moved to Texas, to San Antonio. They advised my father that it was great opportunities, it's warm, great environment for the family, for the kids. So we sold our house that we had in Cesar, Illinois. And so we moved to San Antonio, Texas. My father, he kind of struggled finding work. It wasn't as consistent and as much as he had here in Chicago. But there was also another problem between my stepmom and the Acosta family. And so my father said, you know what? We're going to have to go back to Chicago. So my father goes back to Chicago, leaving us in San Antonio while he earned money to bring us back. I really miss my father those 2 years. 5th grade and 6th grade were really, really hard for me and probably my siblings as well. We eventually came back to Chicago, and I started 7th grade. We came back in the late summer, right before I started 7th grade. And we moved to Berwyn, Illinois in 1992. And now here's a 7th grader, mad, upset, rebelling. And my only outlet was drawing. And I continued to draw. 8th grade came along, I continued to draw. I remember I won the yearbook cover contest. I got a free yearbook, class of 94. And then in the fall of 94, I started high school. Now this is a time where a lot of adolescents, a lot of teenagers rebel, and they test adults, they test the church, they test their parents, they test authority. And so I did. And it was very easily for me to join a gang. And some people may question, well, why did you? Why do people join gangs? And I don't want to concentrate too much on this part of my story, but I mean, I was lacking attention. My father loved me. I know that. He truly loved me. Didn't show it as much, but I know he did. But he was always working. There were times where he would leave before I woke up, and he would come back home after I fell asleep. So I wouldn't see him sometimes for 2, 3 days, 4 days. And I needed him. So I was liking that attention. The attention I did get was from my stepmom, and it was beatings, it was yelling, it was name calling, it was hurtful. So instead of me crying and sharing with my dad, and again, remember, I couldn't tell my dad because I was gonna get it worse. I was like, well, forget this. I rebelled, I got angry, I held this inside. So I joined this gang with my friends when I was a freshman in high school. It wasn't a big gang, the one that we were part of, but we partied with a big gang, one of big national street gangs known throughout the United States, even across borders. And it was crazy. It was nuts. I remember around the first year when I got involved with gangs and the affiliated, I'm a freshman in high school. This is probably 1994, 1995. And I remember we had heard that there was going to be a fight between these certain individuals, two different rival gangs. And us being curious and being a part of that culture, that world, we followed the crowd. And we're getting all hyped up and excited, like, yeah, feeling all, bad, ruthless, untouchable. We followed the crowd. We walked away from our school for about 15, 20 minutes when all of a sudden 3 vehicles, 2 of them being black, drive right next to us, and they stopped a couple feet in front of us, and they started getting out of the car and started yelling and cursing and throwing up gang signs and yelling gang names and gang slang, etc. And we panicked. 2 of my buddies and I, we froze, along with many others who also froze. Some ran up, some ran to the right, others ran back. My 2 friends and I, we ran between these 2 different homes into the alleyway. So we run through there, and we stopped in the alley, and we questioned ourselves. We asked each other, what should we run to? I remember one friend was a couple feet in front of me, the other friend was another feet in front of me, a different on this other side, and we all kind of stood in a triangle, feet away from each other, like questioning, where should we run to? And that's when this individual came. He followed us. He skips me, passes me by, passes my other friend up, and goes to my other friend who was furthest away from us. And he starts beating him up. Bad. Kicking him, punching him. My friend's on the floor. And just when we're trying to go over there and help him, a different individual comes through the same direction. And he goes to my other friend, starts beating him up. Here comes a third guy. And I'm getting ready to get punched or to get kicked, to get hurt, and I'm ready to fight. He didn't say anything. He didn't put up his arms. He just comes straight at me, pins me against the garage door. And just when I'm about to, fight and raise my hand against him, he pulls out a gun, puts it right on my forehead, and he asks me if I want to die today. I remember that clearly as if it was yesterday. I'm wearing my jacket, and he just puts his cold barrel of a gun right on my forehead. He's touching it. And he asked me if I want to die that day. Do you want to die today? And I said no. But while I said that, internally, I'm just praying. And I'm asking God, please, God, take me from this. Take me from this. Spare my life, protect me, save me. I promise. As many do when we are in a dangerous situation like that, we always remember God, and we promise God so many things, as I did that day. And I said, God, please, I promise I'll give my life to you. I'll never do this. I'll change my life. I'll make new friends. Please help me. And I said no again. And that's when I felt him hit me over the head with the gun. Bam! He hit me. And because of the adrenaline, I didn't feel the pain. But then another guy comes, the 4th guy, and he yells at his buddies, "That's not them, that's not them." So they ran back through the same direction that we ran through, up from. And I'm just touching the top of my head, questioning, thanking God, wondering what just happened. I look at my friend, he's on the floor. I look at my other friend, he's also on the floor. We look at each other, we just kind of started laughing. We asked each other, are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm all right, let's go. So as we're walking back home, we were scared, honestly. I mean, we're 14 years old, and these guys were probably in their late teens, early 20s. And every black vehicle that we saw pass by as we were walking back home, we would just drop to the floor or drop into the bushes, scared. Asking each other, you look, is it them? No, it isn't. I don't know. Who is it? I don't know. All right, it's safe. Let's go. And we dropped each other off at each other's homes, and I was the last one to go home by myself. We dropped off my friend, then it was 2 of us walking. Then I dropped off my other friend, then it was just me by myself. And I'm just scared, panicked, frustrated, anxious, praying and talking to God, apologizing for my actions, and promising him I was going to change. I get home and I tell my sister what happened, and she looks at me, she's like, "What's wrong with you? I can't believe it, you're so dumb. Don't do that again." And that's when the pain of that hit with the gun came, and I felt a bump. I started feeling nauseous. My stomach was feeling bad. I felt like throwing up. I just wanted to rest. And as I'm resting in bed, I'm promising God, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna change. Thank you so much for protecting me. But I didn't change. I continued to hang around with the same individuals. I continued to party. I continued to gangbang for the first 2 years of high school. I come into my third year of high school, my junior year, and I replaced gang activity with graffiti activity, just writing and vandalizing on any and all property that I can get a spray can on. And that just took over my life, and that just took me to different places, incredible places, bad places. But I stand here today because God did something special with that experience, with that history. And I just thank Him for that. So in September 2001, on a Sunday morning, really early, sun wasn't up yet, my father comes this direction to pick up two of his workers. And then they were gonna go meet up two other individuals, two other workers of his, to then go to this work site. We worked in construction, and so two of them didn't have a car, so my father came to pick them up, and then meet up the other two to then go to the job site and work. The reason why he wanted to start very early that morning was because I remember that afternoon we were going to have a barbecue for my father's brother-in-law. And Sunday morning, really early, picks up two individuals on the street that we're currently on, and he turned a different direction, and then one of the two that was in the car with him says, Don Ramiro, Ramiro was his name, father's name, he said, "This is not the street, you gotta turn the other way." So he makes a turn there just like we just did, and he comes to this street that we are approaching right now. And he makes a right, as I am, and he's driving slowly. And as he's driving slow, he goes over these speed bumps here, and he's just talking with his two passengers, two workers of his, about the job that they were going to do. So they're talking, and as he comes and he approaches this stop sign up ahead, he comes here, this exact location, and he stops here. He stops here, and just as he comes to the stop sign, there's this young gang-affiliated individual, passes him up, and just as my father's about right here, individual comes and he shoots into my father's truck, striking him right behind the left ear. My father's car, then my father leans over on the steering wheel, and the car was now on idle, like this, and he's approaching, about to hit this parked vehicle up ahead. Just then the passengers in my father's vehicle, they call him out, they're calling him, and they notice that he wasn't responding, so they hit the brake with his hand. One of the passengers hits the brake of the car with his hand, puts the car in neutral or park, gets out of the car just as it was about right here, and he recognized that my father was passed out. He didn't know he was shot. They said at the time they thought it was a beer bottle that hit his head, because they heard the glass break or shatter, and that was because of the bullet. They got out of the car, and the individual who shot my father is just a couple feet away from them, waving the gun in the air, and at them, asking them if they wanted the same, kind of like, threatening, like, you want some, you want some? Then he's speaking in English, and they just waved, no, no, no. And then they, one of them stayed with my father, the other one went to get the other two that they were in search of getting. Then these three individuals come back. Now it's four with my father. And then one of them tells the others, well, I'm sorry, but he's dead. You guys now have to go tell Milton. That's when they went to my house, two of them. And they told me to come with them to this location because my father was in an accident. I get in the car with them, and we're driving to the little village community of Chicago. I remember getting out of the car and looking at police cars, detectives around the area, talking to the different neighbors in front of their doors. I saw my father's pickup truck, doors open, tools on the ground, on the floor, and yellow tape surrounding his truck. And I remember calmly walking towards the vehicle and then kind of picking up my pace and walking faster when I felt this man's hand stop me as they were placed on my chest. And I'm thinking, who are you? What do you want? So he asked me who I was and my age and where I lived and if I went to school, where I went to school, and a series of questions about my family, myself. And I'm thinking, why? What is going on here? And then he just said, well, I'm sorry, but your father's dead. And I remember right there and then, I started kicking and punching and cursing, swearing at God. I was hitting the vehicles that were parked there, punching and kicking those, and getting very angry inside. And then just questioning why, how, and then he told me that my father was shot in the head while driving. He was struck behind his left ear. And when he said that, I wanted to rush, and I attempted to rush towards him, towards the truck, and he grabbed me, and I remember like swinging my feet, swinging my arms to using the most energy that I had, and because of the adrenaline, the news, my body temperature, everything, I felt unstoppable. But this man squeezes me, picks me up off the ground, and he tells me to calm down. I got tired. He squeezed me very hard, so I got tired, and he sets me down and he says, listen, your father's still there. I do not want you to see him this way because that's going to traumatize you for the rest of your life. Remember your dad as he was. Now your duty is to go tell your family. So then I thought about my family. 4 days later now, it's October 4th, 2001. After the burial, we go back home and there's friends and family there. We're eating, we're talking. I excused myself and I went upstairs to talk to God. And I remember I put a pillow on my bed, a pillow on the floor, and I put my knees over that pillow, my elbows over the other, and I put my hands over my face and I started talking to God. For the first time in a very long time, I sincerely talked to God. And I said, God, man, I know about you since I was a little kid. I've done things in my life that I'm not proud of, that I hurt other people, that I didn't care for, I was selfish, whatever. But now, you're the only one that I have. I have no mother, I have no father, now it's all you. Now it's all you, Lord. So please take over my life, I don't know what to do. I'm in college. We have this house, I have siblings. My father's widowed, is pregnant, and I don't know what to do. So come into my life. Take over now. just when I said that, man, I felt this burden lifted off my shoulders. I felt peace, somewhat. I say that because there was still some work to do. I smiled, and I felt like these are gonna be okay.
A principios de los años 90 tuve la oportunidad de conocer a Ramiro. Fui director de la Federación de Jóvenes del área de Chicago. Y estando sirviendo a Dios y especialmente a nuestros jóvenes, tuve la oportunidad de predicar en la iglesia del sur, donde Milton con su papi y sus hermanos eran miembros. Allí fue la primera vez que tuve ese pequeño encuentro con Milton. Estaba muy chico para ese entonces, pero los años pasaron. A veces lo veía en las actividades como a veces no lo veía. Pero en una ocasión, cuando plantamos una iglesia en Berwyn, en Illinois, allí su papi empezó a asistir a nuestra iglesia. Y en una ocasión él me dice, Pastor Enoch, ¿quisiera usted venir a orar por mis hijos? Y en especialmente por Milton, mi hijo mayor. ¿Cómo no, hermano? Fui a orar, llegué a su casa, conocí a sus hermanos, pero Milton estaba en su cuarto. Su papá lo llamó, finalmente él salió. Y cuando Milton sale, lo saludé, le dije cómo estaba la escuela, que estaba orando por él para sus planes. Pero él no me contestaba mucho, solamente, ¿todo bien? Oh, gracias, no más. Entonces recuerdo haberle dicho a Milton, Milton, el Señor te ama, el Señor tiene muchos planes maravillosos para ti. Milton, dedica tus talentos al Señor. Para ese entonces su papi ya me había dicho que él le gustaba el graffiti. Y que en algunos garajes cerca de su casa él había hecho graffiti y que lo habían como amenazado, lo habían maltratado y el papá tenía temor por eso y me pedía que orara. Y yo le dije, Milton, por favor, pon tu talento en las manos de Dios. Podemos usar ese graffiti en la iglesia también. Y yo recuerdo haberle dicho, Milton, ábrele el corazón al Señor. El Señor te ama. Y no sé si leí este texto con él, pero que es el mismo que leo con todos los jóvenes que Dios me permite encontrar. Yo le dije, Milton, Salmo 32:8 dice así, te haré entender, te enseñaré el camino en que debes andar, sobre ti fijaré mis ojos. El Señor te va a dar entendimiento, Él te va a mostrar ese camino por el cual tú debes andar, porque el Señor va a fijar los ojos sobre ti. El Señor tiene planes importantes para ti. Yo sé los planes que tengo acerca de ti, Milton. Planes de bien y no de mal, para darte el fin que esperáis. Y gracias a Dios que Milton en cierta forma escuchó nuestro consejo. Unos meses más tarde, Milton empezó a llegar a nuestra iglesia de Berwyn. Para ese entonces, Celia, Janet y la hermana Romelia estaban asistiendo a nuestra iglesia. Ellos se conocían desde niños. Y allí fue un grupo muy lindo de jóvenes que teníamos en Berwyn. Y al poco tiempo le pedí a Milton que sí, por favor, podía ayudarnos con una clase de jóvenes en inglés. Y Milton con gusto empezó a trabajar con nuestros jóvenes en Berwyn. Al poco tiempo lo fue elegido director de jóvenes de nuestra iglesia. Fue lindo el espíritu, fue lindo el ánimo que había en esa iglesia. Y le doy gloria a Dios porque como dos personas vinieron a decirme que Milton había tenido un pasado un poco difícil. Pero yo les dije a estas personas, el Señor ama a Milton como ama a todos nuestros jóvenes que pasan por pruebas. Y yo le dije a esa persona, Dios no mira lo que ellos fueron, sino lo que ellos pueden llegar a ser. Y le doy gloria a Dios, porque Milton estuvo consagrado a Dios, se entregó a Dios, era activo en nuestra iglesia y en un año fue el líder juvenil de toda nuestra conferencia de Illinois. Un tiempo más tarde llegó la tragedia. Ese domingo en la mañana Milton me llama y me dice, pastor, mi padre lo mataron en la villita. No podía aceptarlo, no podía entenderlo. Gloria a Dios porque el día anterior, ese sábado, habíamos participado de la Santa Cena y ese día Ramiro se había consagrado a Dios, se había preparado para el encuentro con Dios. Hermanos, Milton, con una tranquilidad, con fe en Dios, me dice, pastor, yo tengo a mis hermanos reunidos, yo estoy orando con ellos. Así que cuando pueda, pastor, venga. Enseguida fuimos con mi esposa y exactamente llegamos a su casa y allí estaba reunido Milton con sus hermanos. Les estaba animando, lo estaba fortaleciendo. Luego teníamos que hablar con la esposa de Ramiro. Ella estaba embarazada, pero le dije, Milton, vamos a hacerlo en el amor de Dios. Y le doy gloria a Dios porque Milton abrió su corazón a Jesús.
I can literally say that Jesus would be my best friend, my best man. I mean, when I got married, we didn't have a wedding party. We had a maid of honor, which was my sister-in-law, my wife's sister. But there was no groomsman. There was no best man. My friends asked me, like, who's gonna be in your wedding, or who was in your wedding? Who was your best man, or who is going to be your best man? And I said, well, Jesus. I mean, literally a week before my father was killed, we were eating pizza at a restaurant, him and I, and we started talking about marriage and life. And pretty ironic that we're talking about that, and a week later, his life ended. But we're talking about life and my wedding day, my marriage. And he asked me, so who would you want your best man to be, to stand next to you when you get married? And I said, I don't know, Dad. He asked, would it be your brothers? I said, maybe, but I don't know. Would it be your cousin? I said, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. He's like, well, have you ever thought about who? I'm like, yeah, I have. Who would that be? I'm like, honestly, I think it would be you. I want your dad to be my best man. So he kind of smiled, he looked down at his pizza, and then he looked up at me and he smiled again and said yes. He'll be honored, and he promised he will be there. And a week later he was killed. But Jesus took his spot. I mean, after my father passed away, I had no one. Yes, I had my siblings, but they were also going through stressful and sorrowful situation. I couldn't go to them for hope, for words of encouragement, words of wisdom, someone to rest my head on and cry. I couldn't, because they were feeling the same pain I was. So I felt alone. And so out of respect for my mother and father, because of everything that they taught me and growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I went to Jesus and I said, Jesus, you're gonna have to be my father, my best friend, my homie, my boy. You're gonna be all that in my life because I have no one now. And Jesus said, yes, I've been wanting to be your homie, your best man, your boy, your comrade for years. And so he has become my best friend. And so now, with Jesus by my side, Jesus in front of me at the time, Jesus around me, I can say that my life has been a huge blessing. He has been a huge blessing in my life, and my life has been wondrous, like a miracle, a life of gratitude. I'm just so thankful to him. I mean, to take this kid who was gangbanging and vandalizing and spray painting private property, public property, property that wasn't mine, property that did not give me permission to paint. It's amazing. And now to be called as God's servant and to minister alongside him and to baptize people and to travel and to preach about him, to share his message of love and hope, and to go to the inner cities of Chicago, New York, LA, Miami, and many others to paint graffiti murals that share and express a visual of the love of Jesus Christ for that community, and anyone who comes across it is just amazing. Like, I could take this individual who is gangbanging, fighting and damaging himself and others, and also damaging property, and getting chased by the police and being shot at and being chased by dogs, even homeless people, to be called onto a pulpit in front of hundreds to proclaim the love of Jesus Christ, his love. It's just a representation of his amazing and abundant grace. And I challenge people to try Jesus out. And I think my life is a testimony of that. That no matter where you've been, no matter how dark your life has been, no matter how deep the hole that you've lived in is or has been, that God can take you from all that if you just have a willing heart and call his name out and say, Jesus, take over. And he will do amazing things.